Welcome everybody. This class is kind of a dual-purpose class. We're in the middle of the foundational Qigong training, which uses the Daoist breathing. So I'm going to be teaching a simplified version of the breathing this week in the mornings, and also Bruce is teaching his 3-week breathing course starting next week. So we can also use this as a preparation and a practice session. So part of this class is going to be a little bit of instruction, but then also breathing practice. And this breathing, in addition to foundational Qigong, basically goes into everything, all of the Daoist practices that we teach at the school here. And it can be done as its own practice. It's useful even if you don't learn anything else, just to learn this breathing and practice it, or if you're doing Qigong, to know this practice. And it's something you can easily practice sometimes when you don't want to get up and move around and do anything, or even while you're doing other things. So the first thing we're going to start with is this idea of the diaphragm. Now, hopefully everyone knows a little bit about the diaphragm, or what the diaphragm is, and how it's important in breathing. But the diaphragm, basically at the bottom of the rib cage, right, it cuts all the way through the body, from the back to the front, and basically it's kind of a dome-shaped tissue, right, that goes up and down. And when it goes up and down, it pulls air in and out of your lungs. But there's something else it does besides the air. Right, when that tissue of the diaphragm moves down, it starts to put pressure on what's below it, which is the guts, right, and starts to move them. And this is, in a way, it's one of the aspects of the breathing that, in a way, is, not that air coming into your body isn't important, but in terms of this breathing, this movement of the diaphragm and this movement of the tissue, if you start thinking about that as one of the important things of breathing, that it's getting the guts in here, and then later on other parts of the body, but to start to be massaged by that movement up and down, right? And the guts in here want to be mobile, and you end up doing lots of things with them in Qigong, but initially, right, just for your health and to make them strong, you want to start having this even, smooth pressure. So we're going to start out with this sense of trying to feel the diaphragm, recognize that the diaphragm is moving. So if you can just take your fingers and move it down to the bottom of the ribs, right? You're not going to be able to stick your fingers all the way through to get everything in the diaphragm all the way through the center of the body, right? But you can go to the bottom of the ribs, and without a lot of force, without trying to hurt your body or put too much pressure, you're going to try to find and feel in, and right, if you push in and out, the tissue of your belly has a certain kind of feeling, but then you're looking for something, the tissue of the diaphragm is a springy feeling. And so you're going to go under there and try to push in and out a little bit and look for this sense of spring in the diaphragm, where you kind of have your fingers going in and out, creating a bounce. Right? You may have to dig in a little bit deeper, but not too deep, and you can go right at the bottom of the sternum, right in this area around the solar plexus, but you can also go to the side a little bit, to the sides of the ribs, and you're going to try to find a place anywhere where you can, where you have that sense of, right, like you're pushing on a rubber band, where there's that sense of spring action. And try to notice the difference between that and what it feels like to push on muscle, right, muscle tissue in your belly, but then somewhere in there, you're looking for that sense of spring. And you do your best to, okay, Maybe you have it a little bit, one area. Notice where is springier than others. Maybe it's like, oh, I have that springiness over here. Maybe it feels dead. And if with your hands, you can also, by getting that push a little bit, get it to wake up and let that tissue become springy. And once you get that sense, some sense of being able to feel that diaphragm, then you're just going to leave your fingers there, right? And then you're going to focus on your breath. And you're going to try with your breath to get that tissue to move down towards your belly. And also as the diaphragm comes down, it will spread a little bit. So you'll feel your fingers pushing out a little bit. But you're going to try to, as best you can, to get a sense of that movement of the diaphragm. Now you'll notice if you use too much force, that springy feeling will disappear. If that area gets really tense and tightened because you're pushing a lot. So you want this to be easy. And this is something you can move your fingers around a little bit, but we're just going to do for the next few minutes, just feeling inside your body and practicing the breathing, right? Once you get a sense of having it move, then not only are you not pushing, you're going to try to just let the breath become natural and even. So you don't have to push, right? And you don't have to use force. And you just want to let go a little bit. Once you're like trying to get something to move, right? Even if you're not thinking about it, the breathing is a natural function in the body. So you can kind of then let go of trying to do something and see if you can't feel that movement is happening. And maybe by letting go of trying to do it, maybe you'll start recognizing that it's happening. Maybe it will happen more than when you're trying to do it. And you can kind of go back and forth between those two things a little bit, really trying to feel and activate and get that diaphragm to spring down and come back up. Pushing your fingers out a little bit and going back in. And then just feeling. So you want to let that tissue relax. Also, just let your whole body relax. Since we have the rubber band here, right, you're going to want to have a sense, again, like you're pushing on that rubber band and feeling that spring and letting it go and go in and out. But if you notice as I'm pushing, you're going to try to have a smooth, even pressure and a smooth, even releasing of it. Right, so you're not pushing and letting go, right? It's not like letting go, like, right? It wants to be the inhale and exhale of your body, but then the movement here wants to start to become smooth and even. And getting that tissue engaged to move smoothly and evenly will help the breath become smooth and even. There are lots of patterns you can do with the breath. People do in lots of different kinds of exercises and things like that. But really for what we're doing here, all you're trying to do is have a smooth, even back and forth or in and out, right? And if you can, where the in and out breath is more or less even, right? If this movement of the diaphragm becomes very regular, up and down, and also the breath will follow that, and the breathing will become very even. So the first thing is just to get a sense of that feeling, and then a sense of that movement. Have it become smooth and even, but then also have it become very relaxed. So you don't have any sense as you're going back and forth of it getting hard. And you'll notice, right, sometimes, maybe or maybe not, hopefully what you're feeling is that smooth, even, right? Pressure going one direction, release. But you may notice as it starts to go in, something in your body in one part or another feels stiff or tightens up. And your job is going to be to, when you notice, oh, that area tightens up, it's like maybe your breath is like, hopefully not so dramatic, but your breath, but also you'll feel the tissue in your body possibly not being smooth and even. And your job is to make it smooth and even. But how do you make it smooth and even? By letting go, by relaxing the parts of your body that are stiff and hard so that it's able to have that smooth back and forth, right? Which is different than really controlling and pushing it one way and pushing it the other way, right? So this feeling, you're starting to then get the movement of the diaphragm and also start to feel inside the body. And the third thing is start to relax the inside of the body. So again, there's air coming in and out that's bringing oxygen to your body, and the more we add to the breathing and the more we get that movement of the diaphragm, you're going to be, the breath coming into the body is going to come better, but also this breathing, this smooth, even movement, as it gets more relaxed and as you feel into the body, it's going to start to wake up your insides, and you're going to start to, like I was saying before, start to have the sense of getting the insides of your body to move. So the breathing isn't only about air, right? Air coming in and out and absorbing oxygen, but it's also about activating the inside of the body, feeling the inside of the body, softening the inside of the body. So spend the next couple minutes just continuing trying to feel that spring, trying to get that even movement of the diaphragm, and also start to notice what's happening inside, where that movement is smooth and where it's not smooth. And start to move towards having like an even, relaxed breath. Okay. Let's take a break for a minute, right? Now, not that you're going to stop, I don't want anyone to stop breathing, but you can stop focused on breathing and trying to do something with your breath. Just let everything go easy. And one of the things through standing and practice of Qigong in general is you're trying to start to get your mind to go inside. That's one of the bases of Qigong, right? So that practice, right, you want to build in rest periods where you're really focused on feeling, and then now we're just taking a break for a second, so let your mind go easy. And if anyone has any questions, I know there's people online also, I think. So anyone has any questions in the room so far, feel free to ask, or any online questions. Otherwise, we'll just take a couple minutes off to just relax your nervous system, not have to do anything. So. There's a question in back. Is there a mic back there? Or you can maybe just stand up. There's a mic behind you could use.
Right here. Can you say something about the sitting form? What we should be looking for?
Yeah. Okay. Part of this, during this week, I will talk about sitting, and we'll get into that next, because and maybe we'll just start with that right now, right? Because one of the things that you'll notice, right, is that you breathe sitting, you also breathe standing and moving around. We'll do some, and also laying down. We'll do a little bit of breathing in different postures. But the sitting posture, right, you want to be able to breathe no matter what your posture is and relaxed way, but you'll notice, right, if I sit, right, one thing in the postures of Qigong, right, if you learn the standing and stuff, the sitting posture is going to be the same, more or less, but with some accommodations due to the fact that your legs are bent and you're sitting on your butt, right? But you'll notice one thing we'll start with, right? You have this area, the midriff area, right? And also you have this area in front, the guts. And you'll notice if I let the weight, my body collapse to one side, or even to front, if I have my belly collapse, then the diaphragm gets affected as well, right? If I close on this side, and we can go back to this for a second. If you go back to sitting and try to get this area here, the area between the bottom of your ribs and the top of your hip bone, if you put your hands in there, right? And you can, with your hands inside, from the inside, just get it to open up and lift a little bit, just so that there's a little bit of space. You'll find, and then put your hands on this area on the diaphragm and find that springiness. Get the breathing happening, right? And you'll notice if I pull up too hard, right? If you feel that area and you really try to, okay, I'm going to lift too hard, then you'll notice that your body tightens and you won't have that same springiness, and the breath, the diaphragm going up and down won't be as smooth and even, right? So you don't want to pull up too hard, but from the inside in there, you want to get a sense of lifting, but a sense of something in there opening up so that it creates more space for stuff to move around. And that space allows your guts also, but also your diaphragm to be free to move, right? And then if you put your fingers on there, take a couple minutes to get that breathing to become smooth and even. And hopefully you find some sense of springiness, some sense of that diaphragm movement becomes smooth and even. And I'll say, If it doesn't feel that smooth, and even if it doesn't feel that relaxed, we're going to take this next week, and you have your whole life in breathing to practice this to get that diaphragm to become more springy and to get the insides to become more relaxed. So it doesn't have to be perfect right now, but over time it'll get better wherever it is. But once you have whatever sense of breath, smoothness of breath and feeling in the diaphragm, then try an experiment. What if you close one side? Right. Lilt your body, close that area where the midriff area is, and then notice what happens to the breath. What happens to on one side or the other of the diaphragm, and you'll probably notice that it's not as free, the movement isn't as smooth, maybe it tightens up, or it gets crunched down, and then it loses that sense of being able to, right, stretch and release, open up and come back, right, and try the other side, what happens there. And then you're going to try to, once you feel, oh, that doesn't feel so good, right, then you're going to try to open up both sides. It's not just leaning, but then it's also a little bit of lifting, but then relax. So you're not like forcing your body held open, but you just create that space. And you'll notice how just that simple thing, that posture of the body, will affect your breath. So your breath, getting your breath and that diaphragm movement is a good way to test what's happening with the posture of the body. So that's one thing. Let's just start with that. And once that goes even, we'll just talk about something else very simple, right? The chin. We talked a little about this a little bit, and we'll go into it more in the foundational Qigong. But right when you're standing, the back of your neck, basically you're going to try to keep your spine straight when you sit. For meditation, but also just for breathing, right? Or sitting Qigong, right? That you don't want your chin jutting way forward, but you're going to try to tuck your chin up and then have a sense of the back of the spine lifting up, so the neck, and especially this area up at top where the spine comes into the skull, isn't closed down. So again, you're lifting up and you're trying to create a little bit of space, right? A little space. That's important for energetic flow, but also once you have that little bit of lifting, right? If you lift too high, maybe your chest lifts up, so you want your chest to relax and drop. But that lifting through the spine and the dropping of the chest will also allow this area in the diaphragm to be more free. So you can experiment and try that with yourself also as you're feeling your body, right? Your diaphragm as it's, right, get the breathing going, and then notice if you lift the head, if this area lifts too much, it becomes tight and the breathing becomes strained, right? But if you let the chest drop down and that area stay soft, but still lift and create a little bit space, maybe that will allow that movement to become better. Right, if your chin juts forward, very often that causes the chest to collapse, and when the chest collapses, it's sitting on that area of the diaphragm and shuts it down and affects your breath. Right? So, right, you could, as we've done in the standing, adjust someone's posture, but you could also do it yourself. Right, you can do it with your hand at the back, but you can also have that sense of just the back of the spine lifting up a little bit and that sense of the head lifting off of the spine, right? And right, it's going to be a small amount, but it's going to be a feeling inside the body of as it lifts, it creates space in the head and the neck, right? This will cause pressure down on the diaphragm and also pressure on the spine. So you're going to want to let the chin tuck in a little bit, lift up, but then relax the face, the throat, the chest. And if you're feeling your diaphragm, you have the biofeedback, right, where you can feel, if your posture's good, you'll start to feel a little bit more freedom and movement in the diaphragm. So that should improve the breath a little bit. And then also the midriff, the head. So take a break for a minute again. And you can let your body get floppy. You can stay in a whatever comfortable position, right? But we're going to go back to now, what happens as the diaphragm moves up and down? What I was mentioning before, what's below it gets affected. So you have that movement of the diaphragm, right? Stretching, lengthening out, putting pressure. And then if you put your hand on this area below, right, still in the front of the body, but below where the solar plexus is and where there, everybody, right, some of you may have more relaxed bodies, some of you inside may have tight, more tension, but you're going to feel whatever it is, and you're going to use that movement of the diaphragm, that breath, and you're going to try to get that downward movement to start to move down. And when it pushes that tissue, you're going to allow that tissue to come forward, right? So you don't have to push your belly out, right? But you're going to want that movement of the diaphragm to start moving down and causing that part of the body to spread. So then if you take your hand and feel along this tissue below your ribs, right? That's no longer the diaphragm, but it's the tissue below. What do you have there? You have the muscles on the outside, but then you have all kinds of tissue inside, whatever it is, your guts, right? Whatever's inside there. You want to let that get soft so that then the movement of the diaphragm starts to cause that area to move, right? As you breathe in, it causes that diaphragm to move down and causes that area to start to move. And you're just going to feel it. And the object is, again, right, not to tighten the muscles there, and not to tighten the tissue underneath it, but allow that movement to move into it, into that area. And as that area softens, it will naturally expand. And notice what that area feels like. You may start out on the surface, feel the muscles, but you're going to try to let that wave of movement going through, right, cause, just like if you have something hard and stuck, when you start having movement through it, it can start to let go. And you're going to try to feel that part of your body, get the movement, let that movement move into it, and anything that's tight or bound or stuck there, let it move. And it may start, like I said, with the muscles on the surface of the body. And then you want to start to feel a little bit deeper, a little bit behind them. And you have this area right below where the solar plexus is, a little bit lower. But then also you have this area below the ribs, still on the front of the body, but the front of the body is wide. So you'll want to get this whole tissue to start to move and start to notice, start to feel, release, and also just start to notice what's going on inside. Where it's tight, where the movement's even, where it's stuck. And the more you can do this with softness, the better off you'll be. You might find as you're trying to feel it that you push a little bit and you're pushing that area out to get it to move. But then the longer you practice, the more you do this, you want to let go of that sense of pushing. Just have that even motion from the diaphragm, getting it to move. Once you have a little movement, again like we did with the diaphragm, just breathe and feel. And then you're just watching the movement, allowing it to happen, rather than forcing it. When you allow it to happen, that's when your insides can really release. And if you're doing anything with your mind, instead of pushing, you're going to notice that you feel that motion coming into that area. Let go and allow that motion to come in. And that will make the breath stronger. Rather than this idea of, creating strength through force. Now we're just doing this, just following the breath. Notice the pattern of the breath. And somehow without using force, finding right? You're going to have to find the balance, right? But you're going to try to let that breath become smooth and even. Going out, coming in. The object isn't to control the breath. A lot of the Qigong components, when you're practicing Tai Chi and things like that Bruce sometimes talks about in terms of movement, it's like the difference between, or in terms of fighting, working with the energy outside your body. He talks about the difference like a surfer, right? The surfer's not trying to control the wave. They're trying to ride on top of it, right? So you're following, right? And then maybe you can coax it in a direction one way or the other, right? But again, right, most people, when you're going around your daily life, you don't have to function. You don't have to focus on the breath and make it happen. It's something that's naturally happening. And you want to keep this in mind. The more pieces that we add, the more things that we do with breathing, you always want to go back to this idea of letting your awareness find your breath, and then finding a way to very softly, gently release the body so that that breath function can become stronger. Right? And then, of course, you can nudge it in a direction and you can make it, okay, I'm going to breathe in now, I'm going to breathe out now. But what we're trying to really do is get in touch with that natural pattern that the breath has. You have that area right below. Hopefully you have some movement there. And then if you move your hands down a little bit to the middle of the belly, right? So you're not like right below the ribs, but you've gone down a little bit, right? See if you can't get that movement, not just in that area, but move from the diaphragm down through the upper belly and continue into the middle belly. Notice what's moving there, what's stuck. Maybe you'll feel the movement going down, but then in a certain area it doesn't really enter that part of the body. Again, starting at the skin, the muscles below. And then try to have that movement go deeper. So a little bit further back into the depth of your body. You'll have all the right time in the world to practice breathing. Like I said, you're going to be breathing for the rest of the life. So you don't feel like you have to go all the way to the center, all the way back to the spine. Eventually, everything in the guts starts to get affected by that breathing. But you want it to open up a little by little. And do it without force. You may be able to do it faster with force, but you'll really inhibit your ability in the long run to get your breathing as strong as it can be. Make sure you also, right, the front of, like I said, the front of the body is wide, so you want the sides of your, right, the front still, but the sides of your belly. You're not going all the way to the sides of your body, but you're also not staying just on a thin line in front. You're trying to go through the whole of the front of the body. So make sure you have the sides moving as well. Notice the difference between the left and the right. And again, if you need to, open up that midriff area a little bit, create space so that movement can move through. If you do this slowly and methodically, you'll end up opening everything, using the breath to open everything on the inside of the body. And in this case, everything in the belly. And then you're going to take your hands and move them down to the bottom part of your belly, so below your belly button, right down there. Right. And again, get the breathing going, get the diaphragm moving, and see if you can't get that breath, that movement to continue down. Right, as it's going down, it's causing everything to expand, and you're allowing that expansion to go into the lower belly now. So in the lower belly, the front right under your belly button, and then the sides on the left and the right. Notice what in your body, where in your body the movement comes into very easily, where it feels stuck, and you might find some places that are difficult to feel, especially if you go in a little bit below where the muscles are. Right? You're not breathing with the muscles. Right? It's just that diaphragm going up and down, but you're feeling that pressure causing movement. Causing an expansion of the tissue. Where it feels stuck, soften. Where it feels numb, you can't get your awareness there, feel. It may take some time before your awareness gets there. Once you go and can feel, you can do your best to let go. Let whatever is stuck, whatever is holding on, let it disperse if it moves with the belly. And then for a couple minutes, you're going to take one hand, put it on the top, one hand, put it on the middle, on the bottom. Your hands can spread a little bit, right? Depending on how big your belly is, how big your hands are. You're going to try to cover, right? And just feel. Having your hands there helps bring your awareness there, right? You can have your thumb, the top of your hand, sort of around where the diaphragm is. But now, as you breathe, you're going to try that, feel that movement, and feel that movement of the diaphragm cause everything in the belly to expand at once. There's that downward movement, and it's causing this expansion in your belly, right, in all directions. Right? So you end up with, if you allow stuff to be relaxed enough, you end up with everything opening, right? That pressure causing everything in the belly to open up and then go back. And you're going to again look for a steady rhythm throughout the whole of the guts. We're just at the end, about at the end of time. If anyone has any last minute questions, right, if everyone's not like falling asleep from breathing too much, right, then feel free to ask. But we'll be continuing with breathing, adding parts, moving forward throughout the week. So you can, if you have any questions you need to ask now, then ask them. But otherwise, we can cover whatever comes up tomorrow, the next day, the day after that.
We had one question pop in online, Craig.
Okay, Katie.
From about 10 minutes ago or so, but Samantha's saying, can Craig describe how to influence the diaphragm at the back of the ribs?
We'll talk about that a little bit later, but we'll get to more body posture, right? But you're trying to, right, again, not force something to happen. You're going to try to open up the body as much as possible and allow the diaphragm to move. Start to feel it and start to be able to move with it, influence it, get it to move and release as much as it can. But right, the diaphragm connects all the way through the back. So ideally, you're not just getting this front area to move that we're feeling, but you're getting that whole area of the diaphragm to move. So that's all I'll say about it right now. Obviously, if the ribs are closed down, if there's areas that are stuck, the diaphragm can be impinged back there as well. But anyway, thank you everybody, and we'll take a break now, and we start for the people in the room and the people who are doing the foundational Qigong online as well. We're going to continue in 15 minutes, and I think that you have to log in with your Zoom link as opposed to YouTube for people online who
I think we're
maybe
starting
following
at
it.
10:30, is that right? Okay.
What
So
time are we
we have
starting?
a little more time. We're going to start at 10:30.
10:30?
Yeah,
Okay,
so we've
thank
got
you.
a bit of a break. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, thank you everybody.
Thank you, Craig. Thanks, everyone, and thanks for joining us online here. Again, we'll be back at 10:30, so see you shortly.